Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to sit down and talk with James Edward Radji IV, Zach Smith, and Patrick Stewart from Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix. Before we get to the actual interview, one quick warning. I suppose we need to put an explicit content warning on this one. It's not too terrible, but there is crude language in it here and there. So just so you guys know, it's outside of what we normally do. Although we don't really have a language policy, so I don't even know what it would be. But just so you know, there is some blue language that we usually don't have on the show.
I would say if you're old enough and mature enough to crack open a Lamentations of the Flame Princess role-playing book, then you can handle this interview, and if not, you probably shouldn't listen.
Sounds good.
So there we are at Gen Con, wandering around the trade floor, and by we, I mean Carrie and Lee. And Carrie is our... I don't know, I guess if we had to have a most social character, she would be our most social character on the podcast. So she was making her rounds, handing out business cards, and she was wanting to hit up the Lamentations of the Flame Princess booth anyway, because it is probably one of her favorite games to run. Not even probably. It is one of her favorite games to run. So she stopped by the booth and was talking to the wonderful gentleman there, James Radji and Zach Smith. I don't believe Patrick Stewart was there at the booth. I'm not totally sure.
He was there because she commented on his accent and how much she liked it.
Oh, fair enough.
There you go.
Hooray for you English blokes. Anywho, she handed them a business card, mentioned our podcast, and they asked about doing an interview with us. Jump forward in time, Sunday evening, we are at the Fairfield Inn and Suites, downtown Indianapolis, recording the interview that's about to happen.
Yeah, right on. And so we decided to do it there because when else are we going to get these three guys together in the same room with us? Probably never. They were more than accommodating for us, and we did the recording there. It was awesome. Had a great time. Big thanks to them for taking the time to do that with us. And without any further ado,
here's your interview.
All right. So as you heard, we are here with James Edward Radji IV.
Yes, hello.
Zach Smith and Patrick Stewart from Lamentations of the Flame Princess.
It's a pleasure to be here. Hey.
And we are here at Gen Con 50, which has been a pretty awesome time. And you guys did very well at the Ennies this year and the year before.
And the year before that.
And the year before and the year before. Several nominations for Blue Medusa, Veins of the Earth, just regular, the core book of Lamentations of the Flame Princess.
Not the core book. That's been out for several years. This year, it was Blood on the Chocolate, Veins of the Earth, Broodmother Sky Fortress. Last year, it wasn't a Lamentations publication, but it uses the same people.
Right.
Maze of the Blue Medusa. Year before that, Red and Pleasant Land. I just want to say what a hot streak of writing we've put together, because 2 years ago, Zach won the Gold Ennie over the D&D Player's Handbook in a fan vote. Mm-hmm. Gold Ennie for best writing. Last year, Zach and Patrick, they co-wrote Maze of the Blue Medusa, which got the Silver Ennie for writing. And then this year, Patrick gets the Silver Ennie for writing for Veins of the Earth. So, I mean, these are the hottest writers in role-playing right now, and they are in my stable. So
I very much agree. Yeah. I was very impressed to see. It's cool to see a smaller press competing against these big heavy hitters and getting credit because of quality product, not because of blasting it out there to massive amounts of people. Something that we really appreciate, the quality of the writing, the quality of the artwork, and just the end product of what you guys put out. So we're big fans of it. We've reviewed it. Actually, one of our earlier reviews that we did. So we're huge fans of you guys. So something that we generally do is what got you guys into gaming? Have you always been gamers, or where did this whole process start off at?
Well, I started when I think 8 or 9 years old. My mother got me into Dungeons and Dragons.
Uh-huh.
She wanted to paint the little figures, but she was a single mother of 2 and didn't want to start up an expensive hobby of her own. But oh boy, Jim will get into anything.
Right.
Yeah. And then just a little while later, a few weeks, couple months, whatever it was, she starts hearing, oh my God, D&D is satanic. Oh my God, D&D will make you kill yourself. This was in the 80s, some time ago. I'm old. And so she makes me sit down and watch the Mazes and Monsters movie with Tom Hanks like it's a documentary.
Right. I went through the satanic panic. My mom, the whole thing, and couldn't play D&D as well. She took all my books away and stuff, but we always found a way. Yeah. It's just how that works as being a kid. Did you, Zach and Patrick, start off gaming as in the beginning, or are you just new to this as writers producing content?
Well, I think I'm a late starter. I started around, I think it was around 2005, 2007, maybe from reading blogs. And the first game I ever tried to run was the first game that I read, which was 4th edition D&D. I bought all the books, ran it for like 2 friends, and it went pretty well. I didn't know what to do, so we went through the initial dungeon. It wasn't that great, and then I started making stuff up.
Right.
And I said, oh, wait, we like this now.
Right.
Because you're making stuff up. And then I started reading more blogs and realized I really didn't like Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. I went to pretty much the entire
happens.
opposite end of the spectrum, which is over there with that guy, James Reggie. Then I started blogging in 2011. People started noticing, and then at some point, Zach, Joshua Kowalski, offered me money to buy a module called DCO, which did well. And around the same time, Zach...
Deep Carbon Observatory.
Yes, sorry. And Zach showed me this painting he was working on, saying, I need someone to key this for me. Do you reckon you could do it? And I was like, yeah, it'll be easy, really quick. And then I think 5 to 6 months later, I had like a working first draft, which I then handed back to Zach for editing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then 4 years later,
Yeah.
here we go. I started. I was like into like Iron Maiden and stuff when I was a kid, and so D&D and setting things on fire.
Right.
It was like just one of the other things that we did. We probably didn't like do it right.
If it burns, I think you did it right. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, and then but we stopped for a long time. You know, I didn't play, and then when I was in LA, my girlfriend was getting really sick, and we couldn't like go out and hang out. And this other, my girlfriend was a porn actress at the time, and still is, and our friend Satine, she was like, you know, I really want to play D&D. I haven't played D&D in a long time, and we didn't really have a way to go out and see
Right.
people,
Mhm.
and so we were like, well, we have a thing at our house, and so I was like, okay, I'll run a D&D game for Mandy and Satine at the house, and that'll be cute, you know?
Right.
And so I did all the things, I did the reading and whatever, and then it became like this poker night, and everybody was like, all the porn stars were like, oh, that's the cool thing to do is to go to Zach's house, and like, and I was
Right.
like, people wanted it, and they're like, I was like, why do you want to? Okay, you know, and they're like, we don't have to go out or see anyone. I'm
Right.
like, okay.
Could just do it all right
so
here.
people just kept coming over there, and then people were like angry, like, how come you won't let us play the D&D game? And you're like, you don't understand. Like, I'm good at this, and it became like stupid.
Right.
And then that goes in a dark place. But anyway, that's the end of that part of it,
Right on.
the interview that I was doing.
So what games do you guys play at home? Like when you're not designing games, do you guys only play Lamentations stuff, or do you do other things to sort of refresh your creativity or try out new things or anything?
Okay, I am in the position, I live in Finland, but I don't speak Finnish. I never picked up the language. So it's difficult for me to... Well, when I run games, it's Lamentations.
Right.
You know, so I can say, you know, this is the game I'm running. It's going to be in English. Come play if you want to. But it's harder for me to play, you know, to go to someone else's house or play someone else's game that
Right.
they're running and say, okay, now all of you speak English for me.
Right.
So it's mainly Lamentations.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
In the past, I've run a bunch of stuff ranging from Lamentations to story game stuff. I ran Apocalypse World for 7 sessions, which introduced one of my friends to role-playing, and bits of a game called Microscope.
Right.
More recently, I had a break, and I'm currently DMing a 5th edition game. Oh, though it's a setting that I made up and I packed the stats together. And I'm pretty sure we're not...
Flamingo people.
Yeah, there's Flamingo people, and I'm pretty sure we're not playing 5th edition correctly.
Hey, you make it work however you need to. Right.
Yeah.
On.
I know I'm not playing it correctly because I consulted on it.
I
so
think
know
if
that
I
I'm
think
doing
if
it wrong.
you're having fun and everyone around the table's having fun, then you're playing it the right way. That's what you know.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the wrong way.
No.
But yeah, so I run a really hacked 5th edition at home, and then occasionally people will be like, "Oh, run Call of Cthulhu," so we do that.
Right.
And as I'll get online and be like, play like a Marvel Superheroes Phaser Rip once in a while or something. I'm also working on my own game called Demon City, which is like a horror noir thing. So I've been running playtests of that. But yeah,
Very cool. Right on. Well, one of the things that we like about Lamentations is it's very stripped down and clean, and that you can add to it because, like you talk about with 5th edition, there's a lot of fluff there that a lot of times you don't really need, and that with Lamentations, it's very clean. There's not a lot of extra there that isn't like if you take anything out. Whatever you took out is like everything is there is necessary, I guess is what I'm saying. And the additional all the supplements that come along with it, a lot of them add rules to it, so it's like very stylized towards the adventure that it comes with, right?
Yeah.
So like Veins of the Earth being the best example of it, there's a ton of stuff in there, and it really adds to the overall feel of Lamentations, so that you're kind of pushing the game in that direction for whatever module or adventure you're running. Did you design the game with that in mind?
The design of the game was mainly I came in with the Mensa Red Box, and I've played a bunch of other games, and complicated spreadsheet kind of things like Champions and the Hero System and GURPS, and I played. Well, I'm not going to list all the games I played. That would be stupid, but those are probably the most complicated, math intensive, and. When 3rd edition came out with the character building and the feats, it reminded me of building a character like Champions or GURPS, and it's like, if I want to do this, I'll play those games. So I'm not going to do this with D&D. And then when other people started the whole retro clone movement of the old school Renaissance, it's like, okay, this, we can still do this, and we can create and do stuff. And okay, yes, this is what I want to do, because it's like going home. But of course, I don't just want to repeat what I was doing as a kid in the 80s.
Right.
So of course he changed some things around, and this, my preferences and stamp go on it, and so it's got one foot in the past and is very traditional, and if you know anything about D&D, you'll recognize the stats and you can begin playing immediately and know what's going on, but there's also equally all this new stuff and new influences and just crazy shit going on.
Right. It's very nostalgic. When we first picked it up, I started with 2nd edition D&D, and I was like, I already know how to play this game. It's exactly,
But the nice thing about that is, like, the faster you do that, the more you can move on to the, like, creating content.
To customizing,
I just feel like there's a lot of people who are kind of clever, and they invent a whole new system, and then they stop.
Right.
And it's like, now you have a whole new way to make a very pulpy adventure about, like, soldiers fighting zombies. I'm like, how many fucking times can you fight soldiers versus zombies? It's like, yeah, I just used D&D, 3d6 in order. Now we're going to do some, like, get that. It's like, I just feel like people are just endlessly inventing new pencils.
Right.
It's like, stop. Like,
Draw something.
exactly. So, like, it's like, yeah, we invented a system that's like fucking bullshit. It's just like D&D again. Like, oh, I know this. It's D&D again. I'm like, yeah, I know, wizard. Go fucking do something new. I swore a lot. You're not supposed to swear on this podcast, but that's how I feel. It's like and that's why we keep winning for adventure. It's like in these fan categories that are like voted by people who buy everything out of Wizards. It's like, because there's no one really doing adventures and modules really at a high level, because they're so busy they're complaining about systems and changing everything. It's like,
well, I think in a lot of ways you've distilled the essence of D&D down to what it is, and that's the foundation of what everything else that you guys have produced is built on. So all the focus isn't on refining the system anymore, it's on refining the adventures and making better content, which is why you guys, I think, have succeeded so much. So where does the inspiration for all these, awesome stuff that you guys are putting out now, with Veins of the Earth, and one of my favorites is Cursed Chateau. We just finished that one up and had a great time with that. There's so many, great things. Where does the inspiration for these come from? Is it?
Well, with Veins of the Earth, basically I got kind of obsessed with underground worlds. I've always kind of had a thing for caves. And the idea of doing an my friend, I was talking to him in a comments thread saying, I've always wanted to do a game where you go under the sea and it's full of like deep sea whales and like squid and stuff. And he was like, well, I'll bet you if we do this by this time, then you have to do it. And we'll race to the finish and see which was finished first. So he did his game.
That was
David McGrogan. He did
Yoon
Swim, which is also should be award winning and is quite well known. He finished a long time before I did. And what was going to be a game about the under the sea turned into like under the ground. And the inspiration was basically most caving stuff and most underground stuff is based on, most fiction is just like a worm eating its own tail. So people feeding on games just feed on films, which feed on other films, which feed on 19th century romances, which feed on they just like spin into each other. No one really does any research on it. So I just find out stuff about caves. Basically, I found out stuff about geology for Deep Time. A lot of Richard Forty's books are very good about that. I did a lot of research for like actual caving, a book called Blind Descent, which is a bit poppy but not bad. The works of Norbert Castret, who was like a 19th century French caver, the first guy to ever go under a sump. Just reading lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff about what it's like to actually do caving, and then lying about it. Because you can't do caving in D&D world because the technology wouldn't work even with magic. You'd die so hard. So basically, turning that into a system which felt real and used the Lamentations style dice mechanics, which are all very, very, very simple. D6, solid numbers, not a lot of compare and contrast, and you run it all off the page. So I tried to force all of the complexity onto that. In terms of the cultures and the animals, they're all kind of strange interpretations or extensions of things that actually exist, like underground creatures that live underground. Their limbs tend to extend, they turn pale, they live a very, very, very long time, they have very, very slow metabolisms. There are microbes that can live inside rocks and divide once every 100 years. So you just take the logic of actual underground creatures and spill it out into an imaginative space.
Right. I was flipping through it today before we came here because I haven't really had a chance to dig into it very well because we just got it here at Gen Con this year. And I was looking through some of the cultures, and the way you've laid out the cultures and it's just some of the quotes that are in there. It's just amazing to see the quality of writing that is recently coming to RPGs, because it really sparks the imagination in a different way when you have this really great prose. It's descriptive and dark. That's the one thing, because we're big horror gamers, and it produces better results, I think, at the table when you have better inspiration in front of you.
Well, in some ways it's kind of bad, because really for a game text to be usable, it should be short, sharp chunks of information you can reach into and grab. And my prose, especially at the time, was just very, very lengthy and purple. So if you want to run it
Also long,
yeah. So if you want it out of the book, it's not great. But the idea for my writing is it goes straight into your head, and then instead of looking at the book, you have a very powerful memory inside, and then you interpret from that. So we're trying to basically to affect the emotions and senses of the person reading, so that they can then run the game based on that.
Right on.
Okay, I need to speak to the writing, and I think why these guys have been winning the writing awards year after year. I've got a pretty good game store in Helsinki, and I go down every few weeks, and I look through all of the new releases. And it's mainly the big publishers that have the international distribution.
Right.
And it is so obvious they are writing for the broadest audience possible, and it's so bland and it's boring.
and they get paid by the word.
Yeah, and they get paid by the well. But it doesn't have a voice. It's like they intentionally strip out having a personal voice in their work. And that's awful, and it sucks. And one thing I very much like doing is keeping the author's voice in everything I publish. And making sure that, Forgive Us, it sounds like Kelvin Green. Blood in the Chocolate sounds like Kyle Chenier. Veins of the Earth sounds like Patrick Stewart. There's no blanding out. I mean, of course, we've got a style sheet and things like that, but, well, you guys can tell me, do you think that impacts your ability to write in your own voice?
I didn't know you had a style sheet, and I've written and edited your stuff, so...
Oh, no, wait. I think you told me when I was writing Lamentations of the Flame Princess in acronym, you said the O and the T. Lowercase. I remember that was some very clear writing advice I got from you. But that was pretty much it, I think.
Well, one of the things we always come back to when we talk about Lamentations, we try to introduce it to people, is it's a mature game for mature gamers. It's not written, like you said, for this broad audience. It's got these horror elements, these darker elements that are in there. And it's one of the things that we like about it the most is I feel like it's written for me as an audience, not as casting the net wide to sell as much as you can.
No, it's written for us. This is what we want to see. This is what I want to see when I write something, and I'm hoping Patrick's writing what he wants to see, and Zach's writing what he wants to see, and the fact that you guys like it is almost coincidental.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a thing that happens in a lot of art forms where, like, if you look at, like, the earliest photographers, they were painters or scientists who wanted to do painting or science, and then they found this new tool and weren't doing very well at painting or science, or like had exhausted it for themselves, and then they made early photographs, and they're now classics. And then there was a second generation that comes along a few years later, and they grew up on photographs and were like fascinated by them in a way that nobody else of their background was, and they made these sort of self-consciously creative photos. And the same thing happened like with comic books. So like the first generation of comic book writers and artists were like Jews who could not get a job in an advertising agency as writers or artists because they were Jewish. And so they just did it because they couldn't get the job they wanted, and they did these things and eventually started to like them.
Right.
But the second generation, like Kirby, Stan, like this, the Silver Age, were people who had grew up on the other comics and were like, I want to do that on purpose now.
Right.
And then in the 70s, like Neil Adams and stuff like that, it's like they had grown up on that stuff. And so like the first generation of RPGs, all of those guys, Stafford and, like Gygax, they had wanted to do other things.
Right.
Like Gygax probably wanted to be a novelist in the end, but he was a wargamer, whatever. But we want to do this job, like,
Right.
Like have choices and still want to do it, which is weird. And so we have a more self-consciously, like, we treat it as more pliable material. Like, let's stretch it into a shape that we actually would ourselves play. It's
Right.
not a product it's not a fun job as jobs go.
Right.
It is what we have chosen to do.
But I think you guys seem to have a creative freedom that a lot of other designers don't have necessarily. And that's because I feel like since you're allowed to have your own voice and not be restrained, it brings the best work out of you. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes, absolutely, unquestionably.
Yeah.
It would be difficult to do with any other designer. It would be either too corporate, or if you go with the story game side, it would be rather constrained culturally. And I imagine there's a few nutbag right-wingers who would constrain your culture as well, but there aren't that many of those. But yeah, you need like a reasonable, degree of intellectual independence.
You need also an audience that is prepared for
Weird
something
shit.
messed up, but in
Right.
many dimensions. Like Scrap Princess's art, is not for everyone.
Right.
But I love it. And you have to be able to be like, we're gonna sell this to the number of people who want to buy it, and everybody else can fuck off. And like, you have to be able to be like, this is our space, and certain publishers cannot turn a profit if they do that,
Right.
Because they don't budget it out right, And so we're on a business model where people who know what's what will get what they want, and we will produce it for them, rather than trying to produce for a broad audience and constrain the creative people.
Okay, but I think though the broad audience is also what I'm aiming for, the broad audience without catering to the broad audience.
I agree.
Because when I started this, it was, I had a printer, and every time I got an order for the first printing of Death Frost Doom, I'd print it out, and me and my wife would staple it and fold it and trim it by hand. and now we're doing these big hardcover books that
I'm sure she loves you very much for that, right?
yeah. But that's how it started, because that's all I could do. But people liked that work, and so I was able to do a little more the next time, and people
Right.
liked that and a little more. And every time I do as much as I can, because I see Wizards of the Coast and Paizo and all the bigger companies, the way they present their books, it's what the audience expects. It's what a mass market audience expects. And so I want my stuff standing next to them. I want the mass audience to have to look at my stuff. Even if they reject it, they have to make the choice to reject it. I'm not going to say that we're this niche thing, so we're going to stay over here in our corner. No, I want to be next to them and challenging people and hopefully changing everything around me as people react to what I'm doing, while at the same time having the attitude that this is still not necessarily for you. It might be. Look at it, check it out, and if it's not, just leave us alone.
We
but
just
we are
basically
there.
want, when somebody says, they put on some crappy music and they go, I have terrible taste in music.
Right.
We want them to do that. If they're going to play, like, I don't know, a fucking Green Ronin game, they should go, like, I have terrible taste in games, I'm sorry.
Right.
And then they play.
Right
You
on.
understand? Like, like that. Like, they should understand that if they were cool, they'd be playing LOTFP, even if they're not playing it,
Now, Zach's being, I guess diplomatic's the wrong word there, but when I'm thinking, the big corporate giants that I'm challenging, it's Wizards of the Coast. I mean, they're the big dog, but of course, Zach, after we did Vornheim, well, I was the publisher, he did Vornheim. He got hired as a consultant for Wizards of the Coast, by Wizards of the Coast for D&D 5th edition. And that I love that, because that was one of my guys that's going to do positive change there to whatever degree you were able to change
me and
things.
Patrick are both running 5th, so it's good enough.
I think
Well, highly hacked, as I
Right.
understand.
Absolutely. Hack to be like LOTFP.
So
I think as other publishers look at your guys' success and the products that you're putting out and the quality of them, and it's across the board, the writing, the artwork, the inspiration, all of it, it has to drive them to think, well, maybe we should be drawing in some of these themes as well. And production value is one of the things that seems like all the gaming companies out of Europe seem like their quality of production is on a next level when you stand your guys' books or Symborium or so many of the other ones that are coming out against some of the stuff that's being produced here. I feel like, is there a European takeover of gaming? Because the quality of the writing, the artwork, it's all so well integrated and put together.
It's less the production than the design. If there's one big major difference between the way we produce our books and theirs, it's that we do information design and we focus on getting stuff arranged so that you can find it, that you can find it during play, that things are arranged on one spread, that there are proper indexes, that things are titled properly, and that you don't have like layovers and crap lying all over the books, you're flipping back and forth. And that is a basic level skill that someone who works in an office should be able to have. And there are major corporations who burn God knows how much dollars on digital sheen and mediocre art, but still won't arrange their books properly. It's crazy. It literally drives me mad.
The trouble is that in order, like an RPG manual is kind of like a cookbook.
Yeah.
It is used under combat conditions, like right away. Like, so you need actually someone with GMing experience who is also a good graphic designer, who also can talk to the writer and the artist about what bits they need to add and subtract in order to serve information design. And that's super rare. And even in the big corporate companies, they can throw money at it, but it's harder to throw talent at it. And then they have this production schedule where they need 3 books a year. And so you get these things where it's like they still haven't learned to put the name of the room on the room in the map. Like you have a room that says a tiny little 17 in the middle of it. You got 12, you got like, you could write an alphabet in that space and they put 17. It's like, this is the room with the giant bat in it.
Right.
Like, and put the stats right there.
I feel like a lot of times when you look at some of those style adventures, you're still getting the same old box text that I was getting in first edition. And every art form has evolved and changed, and I don't understand why a lot of that hasn't for the larger companies that way. And that's one of the things that has driven me away from those style games and more into what you guys are producing now. So I guess, do you guys have because you mentioned production schedule and how that can be its own enemy you have to fight, and obviously there's deadlines for everything, but do you have a production schedule that you want to have like 4 releases from Lamentations a year, or are you regimented that way, or are you just more free?
I wish. Thank you, Zach. That's much appreciated. Every so often, a project escapes. That's the best way.
Come on.
Yeah, well, I literally have like 20 things in the works right now. They're in various stages of completion, and every so often there's a happy coincidence that one advances forward, because the people I choose, well, maybe I just suck as a project manager, but the impression I get is I'm getting the really inspired people who don't work on schedule. They're not professional in that way, but when things get done, they're amazing because everyone got them done right. And I find that I rush things more when everything's like at the very end and everyone's just doing the final nitpick, and I'm like, we're done.
But also, you're finding new talent, which means someone who has a day job.
Kyle Chenye, who I don't think he's done some things EN World before, but he hasn't had like a major thing published, and he just won the gold for Best Adventure for his first Lamentations thing. Like, boom, surprise hit.
Yeah, same thing with Hubris, but not by LOTFP, but Mike Evans. Another OSR thing. Like that was his first thing out of the box. It took 4 years, but it was like Jez Gordon, who did the graphic design of Red and Pleasant Land, which has been recognized as like awesome graphic design everywhere. But like he did that while that was not his full-time job. He had not been paid full-time wages to do it. He just had a deadline and like, we paid you, please finish it sometime. And it's like, when you work with new talent, you have
to make certain concessions.
You have to give them time to do it.
Remember the triangle. You can have something fast, you can have it done with less money, or you can have it high quality. And you can usually get 2 of those things. Or we have high quality and we don't have very much money, which means everything tends to be very slow.
So do you guys have day jobs, or are you full-time writer, game designers?
This is my job. Currently, one failed project and I'm back in the call center, but right now this is my job.
Right on.
I'm a full-time fine art painter and porn actor, and this is a sideline.
Right. Well, I know that's the case for most content creators.
Most content creators are porn actors and painters.
You know.
Which is remarkable because of the poor quality of art in most RPG products.
Yeah.
And and they also can't make you come, for as far as I can tell. I mean, Wick probably. He seems like he's
He's the guy that
got
gets it
that
done.
squint in his eye, like
Right.
I'm not going to give up. But I don't know.
Right on.
Yeah.
And is this full time for you? Is this
Yes.
all right on? Well, I think it frees you up in a way to be able to be focused towards it if it is your full time job instead of a thing that you do in addition to it. I'm yakking away here, and you're just like staring at me.
I'm actually just listening. I don't have anything intelligent to add to this
right,
conversation.
well.
I don't
I'll
know.
say something stupid.
What is your favorite LOTFP thing?
Favorite thing? As of right now, it's Vaginas Are Magic. I read the
Very
introduction.
nice.
I thought it was the funniest thing I'd read in a long time. The heavy metal song chart in the back is hilarious and awesome, and the art is really amazing, and it was pleasant to see something focused on women that was so very dark and awesome.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was all you, James. So you should talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes, James, what are vaginas are magic?
Why was that a free RPG day
on
give?
that.
How is that a free RPG giveaway different than all other free RPG day giveaways? Why was it a hardback?
Oh God, you want me to tell this story? Well, the year previous, there was slugs.
Yeah.
Slugs.
It was about slugs.
yes.
It was loved, I think.
It was a bestiary of 16 types of giant slugs. And it had an introduction that was written during the U.S. presidential campaign. So it was done in the
Right.
voice of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, just kind of mixing it up. And it was very convenient that the big RPG companies are in Washington State, so I can talk about the Washington gaming establishment and this 1% of the gamers, just taking creative control from the 99%. So we're going to make gaming great again. And
And that was received very well.
oh yes, everyone understood precisely
You
that.
know,
it
how,
was
like the
common.
internet is really good at understanding irony and nuanced speech.
Yeah.
And they carefully parse and contextualize
Everything.
things that are written.
Oh, yeah.
They do that,
Yeah, and then also there was the love slug that you had to fuck to get special powers. And I had an Italian guy illustrate that, and maybe that's where it all went wrong, because that guy didn't care about restraint
Right.
or anything.
Those Italians.
Yeah, so this goes out to the stores. First it goes to the Free RPG Day warehouse.
Right.
I hear nothing. Then they're saying it's going to the stores. I hear nothing. And then Free RPG Day comes, and people say they're going to the stores, and the stores refuse to give it out. The stores just threw it away. People are getting yelled at for asking for this thing. And there was one person that said they went dumpster diving behind the game store to save copies. And so I thought, okay, what do I do about this? Do I apologize? No. Do I tone things down next year? No. So I had this idea. Well, fuck it. I'm just going to call the next thing Vaginas Are Magic.
Go big or go home.
But it was a joke.
Yeah.
It was a joke. It was like, oh yeah, vaginas are magic.
That doesn't excuse it. When you use the language of our abusers, Raji, how can we tell the difference between you and them?
Yes, because abusers all think vaginas are magic.
I don't really know. Anyway.
Yes. So eventually, this became a thing that people are like, do it,
Right.
do it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And how do I really get back at the retailers besides because they can just throw this out too? So it's like, okay, I'm gonna make Free RPG Day a hardcover book, and I am going to
Which
have,
is that no one does that.
Right.
yes, because it's very costly and
It's
stupid to do.
throwing money away.
Yeah. Yes.
It makes no sense.
None whatsoever.
Patrick and I probably got paid less because of that.
Yeah. And then I was going to make this very heavily, profusely illustrated by a, hot talent in comics. Rosie Campe. I'm probably screwing the name up. Sorry, Rosie. She's done work for Marvel and Top Cow in the past year, and she's got other stuff going on. And she did 20 full-page illustrations for this book. And we're going to do it hardcover. And the model, the characters I use regularly in the art, there are real people that are models for those. And one of the models was putting together the actual costume of her character. So I was like, okay, we're going to do a photo shoot. And just make it as insane and collectible and attention-getting as possible. Call it Vaginas Are Magic. It's a book of spells that only women can cast.
Right.
And then be very plain in the introduction. This is hardcover because retailers that don't carry it are going to lose the confidence of their customers. And I put that in print. And I remember once that got to the stores, I got the email from my distributor.
So this was an attempt to terrorize your
No,
retailers with
not an
quality.
attempt to terrorize, an attempt to get them to get the stick out of their ass and just put the book out there. Because not only did I criticize them for throwing away slugs, I provided at my own expense the solution. And I talked about the solution right after criticizing, and I provided the solution with the physical packs of books. I provided a flyer that had nothing objectionable on it, that you can just put down and say, that this year's product has explicit content, ask for your copy, so they could keep the books behind the counter. The flyer can go on the table with the other stuff so it still has promotional value. No kids accidentally page through it. Every single person wins.
Right.
Not good enough. So my distributor in the U.S., or a person that deals with my distribution in the U.S., is the person that runs Free RPG Day. So when the store started getting this one, I get the email. And fair enough, he told me, and I don't even know if I should be saying this publicly, but fuck it.
It's a bit late for that, really.
Yeah.
Might as well carry on.
Yeah, he tells me, he's like, James, I understand how that you feel this way towards some of these retailers, but I still have to work with them because I deal with all these other companies' stuff too. Can you please not antagonize them in print? And it's like, okay, fair enough, but I provided the solution so they wouldn't be the people I'm complaining about. We could all win, but that's still not good enough for some people. And my entire point is let different people do different things and the customers will like it or they don't. If the customers reject it, fine, keep it out of your store. But why would you just not want to have all sorts of different flavors in your store? It's like you go to the multiplex and they're playing the Avengers and they're also playing what are the horror movies that are coming out these days? I mean, they've got horror movies, action adventure, children's cartoons and dramas, and they've got all of that stuff. But in a role-playing game, if you want to have that diversity, you're going to run into problems because for some reason all role-playing games have to be, kids.
Right. That's one. It goes back to the exact mature games for mature gamers.
Yeah.
So my burning question is
I would
Eldritch...
say explicit. I wouldn't say mature.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mature gamers.
That's fair. But so my burning question is Eldritch Cock going to be a thing next year?
Yeah, well, that was the joke I put in the introduction of Vaginas Are Magic. It was just a punchline. Oh, yeah, and if anyone worried about magic that men can cast, well, next year we're making Eldritch Cock.
Right.
And so people are asking me, you going to do it? You going to do it? It's like, oh, no, I don't know. This was a joke. I don't want to make a
But also,
penis supplement.
You're right, but I think at the same time, it is a joke, and I don't know. When we read the introduction of the book, and I read it, and I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly how I feel about a lot of, I don't know, dumbing down or
sanitizing.
Yeah, exactly. Of a lot of the RPGs, and I thought, well, why not?
Plus, we all know that penis supplements sell really well.
Yeah, well, that's a very good reason to not make it a free RPG Day release. I can just make that a normal book for sale.
But also, it's a really good magic system.
Oh yeah,
that like what Patrick said, got stepped on a little, but terrorize them with quality. Dare you to admit that you don't like this. It is like saying, I have bad taste in music. Every single person who complains about Vaginas Are Magic, well, you go oh, the title is obviously offensive. I'm like, well, yeah, but
no, it's not. It's not.
If you offend someone, you've been offended. It doesn't matter. There's no if something is it's offensive as soon as you've offended one person, which means everything's offensive.
Okay.
Yes, the title is offensive.
Technically,
it's offensive to the people who got offended. However, they then have to every time admit they didn't read it. The same thing with Carcosa.
Yeah.
Right? That was the first
Did you
controversial
get a lot of
thing you put
pushback
out.
on Carcosa?
No, the pushback happened. The first edition that Jeffrey McKinney, the author, he did a self-published version that got a lot of pushback. And by the time I came along and published the deluxe version, there really was no pushback because that had already been depleted, and it was the same book, just all fancied up.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But it was also people were embarrassed to say, oh, I haven't read it, you know? And then everyone who did would be like, if I say this is bad, I'll look like a rube because it's actually kind of good, you know? Like people, like if I wrote a bad book, you'd hear about
Right.
it, you know, like the next 8 seconds,
Right.
you know, like people are really hoping that I'll do something bad so they can be like, well, look at this page,
Right.
like that. It's like, so we don't have like, I'm just like, no typos, no, just like, it's good. And like, and so you have to like just direct the energy somewhere else and just be like, terrorize them with quality. Just be like, all the time, day and night, terror, quality, terror.
Quality
The
terror.
art, terror. The layout, terror. The production values, terror. The customer service, and that's not a joke, terror. Like, is one guy, and
Yeah.
he does a better job of getting you your book than fucking anybody else in the business.
As far as NEs to employees ratio goes, I think he's higher than anyone else has ever had in the NEs.
right?
Dependent on the temperament of the Finnish postal worker that particular day, of course.
right. So we haven't mentioned Red and Pleasant Land, which is a game that kind of got this all started with Carrie walking by, and I had it and was going to run it, but didn't get around to it and all this kind of stuff. It's very different. Like, it's obviously, you know, it's very clear to see where you draw the inspiration from it for Jesus Christ, I can't fucking talk. It's very clear to see where some of the inspiration came for it from, but it's so, I don't know, like trippy and weird, I guess, which is very clearly what you were going for. Can you just like, where did all that idea and the whole process of it like start and come from and develop from?
It started like so many projects at LOTFP with a joke. James Raji got on online and he was like, I should just publish an adventure that's just like a little girl in stripy stockings with her legs spread, and it's just called Eat Me, you know, and I was like, I just wrote for a modest advance, and whatever, and then they get an email like, all right, well, what are you gonna do with this? And I'm like, I don't know, but give me a lot of money, and so I sat home and I wrote for a week, and I was like, all right. I made it into a thing because I was like, Alice in Wonderland was one of the first books I ever read that was a book, you know, like you know, and Through the Looking Glass, and D&D was very inspired by that. Like it's explicit, but you know, like there are so many little tropes that about, and it's about childhood, and like when you're a child, your objects are huge, and people's homes, even though they're banal homes, are like crazy mazes full of a lot of things you don't understand.
Right.
You know, if you walk through an adult's home as a 5 or 6 year old, you just like, what is that? Oh, it's just a vacuum cleaner. Oh, but it's yellow. You know,
Right.
like, you know, ooh, what's that? It's like, ooh, can we go up those stairs? Like, I don't know. It's like, the world seems so much more mysterious and opaque. And both the dungeon myth and Alice drew on that very strongly. And there's a lot of things in common, and then you got all these motifs that you can kind of reshuffle, and so it had that sort of that, and then plus it was just like, it's been done poorly so many times, which are my favorite, you know, like I will show you how to do it right now.
I'll be honest, because when I first saw it, it is a very big cliche thing that's been done over and over and again. And I thought, oh, well, here we go again. But I saw the Lamentations label on it. I thought, well, okay, let's actually give it an honest look. And I picked it up. I was super stoked about it. There's a darkness and to it that isn't present in a lot of the other Alice in Wonderland inspired things. And it's got a very different take on it in a way. It still rings of the Alice in Wonderland, but with I forget the darkness,
You could ask the author.
I'm looking at you and asking you right now. The two forces, the White King, is it, and then the
there's a basically I took Alice in Wonderland, I overlaid vampire, like I was really inspired by that couple seconds in the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula movie where there's all these red armored troops moving, and I was like, whoa, vampire war. And then I was like, Zach, you got a really cliche idea right there, Alice in Wonderland, but dark.
Right.
And I was like, I better do a really good job. You know, like I better make it like look so unrecognizable that the cliche of that stupid nerd mashup actually feels substantive.
Right.
You know, and so Dracula, like, is it like basically like the Red King is a character in Through the Looking Glass who it's posited, and there's a thing called the Red King's Gambit that in fiction, the idea that the fictional character dreams the world, and so we're the dream of the fictional character. And then, but the Red King is also the red armored Dracula from, like that idea. Yeah. And so then I was like, well, Elizabeth Bathory, whose castle is on the other side of the Carpathian Mountains, like literally, like if you actually do the thing in real life, although a different time period, she was, then she would have to be the Queen of Hearts from like Alice. Everyone knows her from the movie, like off with his head, and I'm like, oh, she's chopping off heads. Like it all kind of starts. You just overlay these two things, and they start making sense. Plus, James had done an Elizabeth Bathory versus Dracula like as a throwaway idea in another thing, and I was like, and I without reading it, I hadn't read it yet. I don't think it'd come out yet, but he was like, his was all historical, and mine was just like, I'm just like shifting these symbols around, and reshuffling them. And so I just sat down trying to be like, okay, what if he's this dreaming king, but he's Dracula? Right. And then what if the whole landscape is D&D-ified? Like it's just essentially all, instead of Romania or Hungary, you have a war game. Like it's just turned into tesseracts and tunnels, and it's like these weird spaces. And then it just sort of started writing its own ideas,
So we mentioned Cur Chateau earlier, and it has this lead from it into Red and Pleasant Land potentially, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. That was a terrible pun there. My bad. Oh my God. Anyway, a lot of your products are kind of designed to kind of fit together and link into one another. Is that intentional?
No. Well, the links are more Easter eggs. Every project, like Cur Chateau, Malashevsky had self-published that through his imprint in 2008, 2009. It was a much different adventure. The entire complex was much smaller. It was filled with standard D&D things which were nonsense in the context of the chateau. Right. Oh, this thing's an ogre mage. No, there's a wand of fireballs sitting in the trash as treasure. But it was still the concept of the adventure, I thought, was one of the best I had seen from the new generation of writers, of old school writers, I should say. And so when I approached him about re-releasing it and making it expanded and making all of the things make sense within their own context and throwing out the D&D cliches, that was the inspiration for that project in the current version of the Chateau. Any connections to anything else, it was just an add-on. Oh, let's throw something in for the fans or something like that. It's not integral to the project itself. Blood in the Chocolate has got something like that refers to Red and Pleasant Land, but that's not a core concept of the adventure. It's just, here's something. Here's a fun thing.
So is that part of your resource document that doesn't get sorted out very well, that you hand out to all of your?
No, I mean, we're just friends and we like each other's stuff.
Okay, right.
But I feel like LOTFP is like Mr. Potato Head. Like James made his potato and he gives it to every single one of our writers. He's like, put something on the potato. Right. And I'm like, I'm going to put vampires that have horse heads. And Patrick's going to I'm going to put the earth hating you. And, and then here you go.
I guess we mentioned production quality before, but the quality of the artwork that you guys have is
it's really good.
Yeah, and
it's really good.
So distinctly its own. You could hold any picture of it in front of me, and I'd be like, that's a Lamentations game. I don't know. I've never seen that picture before, but that's from a Lamentations product. I guarantee it. Has it always been that way? Or, when you first started off, and your wife was stapling these things together while you're printing them, did you have that quality of art as part of your vision of what you wanted to do down the road?
Not really. I remember when I first started, I didn't like color art or anything, but that's mainly because I can't do it. Right? Why would I like something that I have no chance of doing? But as soon as I could hire someone that can do high quality art, I loved it. Right. So I got that going on in my head. But yeah, well, again, the idea was if I'm going to do this professionally, I've got to stand next to the professional companies and impress people that are just paging through books in a store or coming through the convention stalls and just looking at it. It's got to grab them. It's got to impress them. It can't be something we have to apologize for. Right. So, again, it's just a matter of, strategically hiring artists that
There are a lot of really good artists
Yeah.
all over the internet who do really individual stuff and who will never be hired by any of the major companies
Yeah,
who produce
yeah.
90% of the art. So it's not like you're going, oh no, I need an original artist. Oh, well, I need someone who's got their own vision. Where will I find someone like that? It's more like you turn your head 1 degree to left. It's like, and then people going, hi,
Right.
hi, I'm good, I'm visibly good, but I don't want to do like derivative digital crap. And you're like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the trick is just matching the artist to the project and not just shoehorning your artist into whatever project is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that gets lost, I mean, there's a couple other RPG people besides me who are artists on the book too, like Janelle Jaquays, you know. And I think like the artist, as much as possible, when it is possible, if they can be part of the conception of it, you save yourself a lot of work.
Right.
Because you don't have to describe the rust monster because someone drew it already. And so like with a lot of Patrick's stuff with Scrap,
Yeah.
Scrap would do work first and then Patrick would write over it. And with my stuff, I would draw stuff and then be like, what is that? And then I know that stuff, like a lot of times, James is like modest about it, but he was thinking about a style of art
Right.
long before he could get the artist who could do it. You know, like that was an early part of the conception of it. Is he wanted these finished books that had they were a grimoire tome of their own, and that meant the art was not separate. It had to be that. You can't just hire a writer, then hire an artist, then hire a graphic designer.
It's all one project together.
It is a book. It has to be that object.
Right.
You know?
So is that you talk about matching the arts to the project? So that's and black and white. You know, not wanting color art. So Veins of the Earth has no color art in it.
No,
And
actually,
it
it's got
does,
quite
yeah.
a bit of color art in it.
is there?
It's
Yes.
just not easy to see because a lot of it's really intense black and white. But yeah, we it cost money. It would have been easier to do it in black and white by quite a lot. But there are a few bit fragments that have color, and we were like, "Do you want to do the whole book in color just for these pages?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're doing it."
It's like these red, brown.
Okay, then I said I haven't gone through it very well. I just
And the
got
background texture is a 4-color background texture.
Oh,
So
wow.
there is color everywhere in the book. It's just not as obvious as other books might be.
Veins was the first time I met. That's the reason I met Scrap because I was doing the Monsters of Veins, and I got so into it. I was just doing 50 of them, and Scrap contacted me and said, "Oh, these are." She left a comment on my blog saying these are really great. And I was like, "Oh, I like your stuff as well." Blah blah blah. That was, and then we started working together on that. That's the first thing we collaborated on. Everything else we've done since then, which came out earlier because Veins took such a long time, we've got integrated our efforts more and more. So we did Deep Calm Observatory together, where she did bits of it and I did most of the writing. We did Fire in the Velvet Horizon, which is her doing the art first, and then me writing over it. And we've done Broken Fire Regime, which isn't going to be out for a while, but it is like us conceiving the world together, and then her doing art and me writing, and her doing art and me writing. So the longer our relationship's gone on, like the more integrated the process has become.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. I don't know what your guys' timeline is. I mean,
I got all night.
right on. So, well,
I mean, listen, go hard or go home. I mean, if you're going to do an interview, do an interview. You haven't asked us anything that no one else has ever asked us.
well. So, like, what do you guys? I know this is obviously an easy one, but like, what do you guys have in the pipeline besides, what people have seen here? Or
See, there you go. That's a good
I know.
question.
Well, it's one that you've probably been asked 1,000 times, but it's always like everything is so different. It's and uniquely its own thing. Is there like what do you guys have coming up next?
Okay, I have that referee book, which has turned into an albatross around my neck and is now a Star Trek 5-year
Yeah.
mission to get it completed. But Lamentations of the Flame Princess is very terrible at getting crowdfunded stuff done on time, at getting anything done on time, which is why I don't plan on doing crowdfunding again
Right.
anytime soon. But everything else that's been crowdfunded has come out. It's been late, but it's come out. Referee book's going to be the same thing. That's one thing I do have to apologize for, but we over-deliver the hell out of our Kickstarted stuff. So
Right.
when the referee book is ready, everyone is going to just have their eyes pop out of their head. Their minds are going to explode, and we are going to rule the gaming world.
They'll be
Anything less is
terrorized with
unacceptable.
quality.
Yes. Anything less is going to be very unacceptable at this point.
Do you guys have like where do you guys go for sources of inspiration? Do you have particular things that you find that you draw from?
Where do we get our ideas?
More or less, like is there like a particular artist or anything that you guys can go to look at to find sources of
I'll
inspiration?
tell you, like for me, I just read things that are bad and get angry and
Right.
go, I have to do this right. Like,
Right.
it's been 40 years of this hobby. I have to do it right. Like, put the fucking name of the thing on the map, you know? And so, like, the one we got Frostbitten and Mutilated is coming up, and it's like a hex crawl where the fucking thing that's in the hex is on the map. So you just go and you go there. Oh, the next one in the description is there. And it's like that. Just get that done. And
Right.
during the time you're doing that, you have the other ideas that are like, oh, that's a nice sentence.
Well, I think we're both pretty intellectually omnivorous. We steal from everywhere and make a lot up.
Yeah.
I read a lot. Like in the latest thing I'm doing called Silent Titans, I was reading through a history of my local area and found a story of a guy who acquired the rights to a medieval court of justice from a sold estate. And because they were still valid and never been revoked, and ended up running roughshod over the entire area as basically a legal street gang because he could compel people to attend court. Right. And they'd call the police on them and he'd say, no, I've got documents. And they'd say, but that's Valium. And they'd be like, yes, but check it out. And they'd be like, oh shit, it really is like a legal court. So that's turning up in a game.
Right.
Yeah, so from everywhere, really.
Right on. That's really weird.
Yeah, I know, but that happened in the world. So
Right.
look out for that in an upcoming product.
Yeah, I read a lot of history books. I'm very interested in the 17th century, and I have a ton of history books from that, dealing with that time period. So, of course, it's bled into Lamentations.
Yeah, it's very clear to see it in there.
Yeah, and I also like horror movies and that imagery and heavy metal and all the weird things. And I'm now into the trend of the 70s style psychedelic rocks, and now there's all these wild colors and shit that are showing up in the books. And yeah, I mean, if it's something I enjoy, I don't separate that out. This is my work, and I will separate
Right.
that from things that I like. It just all goes in there, and 5 years from now, maybe I'll be into techno, and who knows what the game stuff will be like.
Yeah, you mentioned the music, and Lacey earlier mentioned the table in the back of Vaginas Are Magic about the spell list for
Yeah.
the death metal songs. Like, it's so obvious. How did this not happen sooner, that was put out somewhere? But it was just, there's so many unrestrained ideas. I guess, there's you guys, it's very refreshing to see things that are coming out that aren't held back. So your chart, or there are several charts in all the products, obviously, but is there a conspiracy to sell a D50 with the veins of the earth? Where did that come from?
I ripped off Fornheim. Veins of the Earth
I never
was...
did a D50. You don't have a D50, you have a D100. You go 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6. A D50 is perfect.
It's not labeled in there that way.
It's
You're
just
right.
I did that book, and then when there's a D50 after, I never saw it again. So I don't know how a D50 got in it.
It's easy to fit 50 lines, 50 simple lines on any 5 page.
Right,
So if you
right.
want a high density chart, then that fills up the entire page quite neatly.
I thought there must be some conspiracy to sell D50.
I use a
I
D100.
like collecting strange dice. And I know Dungeon Crawl Classics makes a big deal about the weird dice, but I had to go up to them and tell them, you do know there's a D60 and a D120 out there.
You're right.
now. Yeah, and I'm going to make sure those things
Well,
get
they're
used.
fun.
Well, yeah. And it's stupid to only work on probabilities based on what dice manufacturers give
Right.
to you. Now, the fact that there are more different dice coming out, that's great English, more different dice coming out, it makes it easier to use the things, but then I'm behind technologically. I don't know how to use my phone properly, but everyone else does, and you can have random number generators.
Yeah.
And you're not limited by the dice. Of course, you feel like a real gamer if you can actually roll the die that
Right.
matches the number of things on the table, but there's no reason to be limited to a 20-item table, 100-item
Right.
table. And yeah, that's artificial, and I guess sometimes it's good to have that restraint built into it, but you don't have to. You never have to.
Well, do you have anything?
Okay, I asked you, what's your favorite LOTFP product? We did that already.
Yes.
You play, right? So what's your favorite LOTFP moment? Like you're playing, something happens, or running a game. Or just a good one.
Okay, so my friend Carrie, she ran the Cursed Chateau for us, and I really liked that not all of the ghost creatures in the house were necessarily sinister. And the little boy that's in the Cursed Chateau, there was just a beautiful interaction with him and talking to him and seeing his perspective on what was going on in the house. And I thought that was really cool inside of this big horror campaign to have like just this innocent moment with a child where you're just having a conversation.
How long during the conversation did it take you to go, to relax finally and go like, oh, okay.
It was pretty significant. I was just like kept waiting, like something bad is definitely gonna happen. Like he's gonna push me out this window. It's like, oh, look at the stars, shove. No, it was all good.
Okay.
It's always good when you can create so much paranoia that you can be like, this room has a muffin. And everyone's like, you touch it. Like, what is that? I'm gonna use unseen servant to smooth.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely not under any circumstances going to eat the muffin. It's not going to
But
happen.
this is important to have in an adventure. Have things that aren't at least immediately hostile. Because if everything's always immediately hostile, then of course the characters are just going to attack every
Everything.
single thing they come
there's
across.
no real meaningful division between monster and NPC.
Yeah,
really.
and there's no decision for the characters to make at that point because, of course we're going to attack this because it's going to stab us in the back at some point if we don't. So you have to make sure that there are meaningful decisions, there are things to play with and interact with and not just fight.
I liked about Curse Chateau is that it actually you could lose. You could be trapped inside it, and there's a lot of that stuff where a lot of modules or whatever are designed that you're just going to make it through. It's a foregone conclusion for the most part, and the potential to actually have something designed to where we're going to lose, we're stuck here forever, I think is just a cool feature of
Yeah, well, adventure locations by necessity should be hostile. I mean, that's the adventure. It's not an adventure if it's friendly and easy. And
It's like when people are like, oh, we had great adventure in Greece.
yeah.
No, you didn't.
Adventure literally means something that opposes you. It adds to your venture, so you're going somewhere specifically so that you can be opposed. So the
adverse.
so the circumstances of what you're doing will try and stop you from doing it, and you're making a choice to go there and to do that
Right.
thing, so that you can be in this complex situation with the environment pressing upon you and you having to decide things. So if that's not happening, it's not an
Yeah,
adventure.
losing in any adventure has to be an option. It has to be. If the players act stupidly, if the dice all come up wrong, losing must be an option, or else what the hell is winning?
right.
Yeah, you need to punish stupidity so that you can reward cleverness.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I think it goes right back to exactly the thing with the little boy that was innocent. Without the contrast of the two, it all becomes meaningless essentially. So very cool. Well,
I want to do one more thing
go ahead.
because I'm going to show James this, and I'll show it. I'll show him this on film. So we went to the color exhibit, me and Patrick, in the Indianapolis Museum, because we're at Gen Con, and this is the blackest substance on Earth.
Oh yeah, it's badass.
Photograph next to it. So, just so you know, they have it here, and there it is.
I wonder if we can bind a book in.
Exactly, right?
Right? Exactly.
Well, do you guys have anything else you want to plug that's coming out that you guys have, in the pipelines?
In the pipeline doesn't mean coming out imminently.
Well,
I got, like I said, Frostbitten and Mutilated is coming pretty soon.
Hopefully.
And then I've got my own game coming out called Demon City, which is going to be a noir horror, modern horror, like a game from scratch.
right.
And Patrick?
I have two things that are in the pipeline. One is a game called Silent Titans, which will have that court in it, which is intended to be a whole game. It's based on a rule set called Into the Odd by Chris McDowell, who's a very underrated UK game designer, who does this very extremely simplified version of D&D that one nerd can play with normal people because it feels like a conversation. And that's going to be like a whole book. And then I have Broken Fire Regime, which is a quasi-sequel to Deep Carbon Observatory, intended to be one of four eventually, and this one's based around fire. There's like a corporate hell state and a weird magical feudal realm, and they're separated by a fire, but the fire is burning away one side of those realities, and you can only pass back and forth between it. So it's kind of like a firebox. That's what I've got going on.
That doesn't sound like normal fantasy role-playing.
No, it doesn't.
What kind of fantasy role-playing is that?
I would say it's weird, but also kind of horrific.
Weird horror fantasy role-playing?
No.
Yeah, and I've got sooner or later, hopefully sooner, the referee book, and then I've got this backlog of projects I haven't gotten to because that's been gumming up the works. Covered in Sick is something I really need to do once the referee book's done. And then, of course, it looks like my arm is being twisted, and for Free RPG Day next year, I'm going to have to do Eldritch Cock.
Sweet.
Right on. So where can people find you guys online or social media anywhere?
If you Google False Machine, you find my blog, and if you just go to the Lamentations LOTFP website, you get Veins.
Yeah, lotfp.com has links to my social media and all that fun stuff.
And I'm at DND with porn stars, one word. I'm the only one that comes up.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down with us, and thank you for all the great stuff that you guys produce. We really love it. I know there's lots of people out there that do.
Thank you.
So please keep making awesome games, and please don't bend to pressures, which I don't think that you guys probably will, because there's a lot of people out there that I know that really love what you guys are doing. And
Well, tell them to be vocal about it, because what gets when we win an Ennie, it's like Ennies are nothing. There's no one outside the industry knows what it is.
Mm-hmm.
People inside the industry who have real jobs full time, an Ennie, that's cute that you got one.
Right.
But when we get one, because of fan voting, we sell more copies.
Oh, yeah.
Means Patrick gets to eat. That's it. Do you want this guy doing you're driving a car that you might be in?
Probably not.
No. Do you want him maybe doing your taxes? No.
No, don't do that.
This keeps him off the streets. So you need to talk about it, yell about it, complain about it. Just do something about LOTFP. Seriously, if you're hearing
A
this,
tattoo sounds good.
it's
Maybe a facial one.
yeah, get a tattoo on your head. But also, it's what is it, the Golden Girls, Rose, which is she's on the PBS commercial on The Simpsons. If you're watching but you're not donating, you're stealing TV, from PBS. It's if you're enjoying LTF, you've already paid money for them, I hope. But if you're enjoying, because they're worth more than the cover price, right? The cover price is like any other RPG product, but they're much better. So all of that, how much better they are, that's extra that you're stealing. And the way you pay it back for stealing from us is you talk about it online and you give us advertising. So stop stealing. Terrorize your friends and foes with quality. Talk about LOTFP all the time, everywhere. Find the least appropriate places and do it. You need to do that, or else you're stealing from a poor. Did you hear that? What he said before? His full-time job is writing role-playing games. He said that on public into Brexit England. He's living off that. And James Raji, he hasn't got any government of that fat Swedish socialist, Finnish socialist
Actually,
things in years.
The exchange rate really dipped after Brexit, so that improved my checks coming from America.
And then, so they're gonna die.
well, I'm happy.
The stretch goal for this Kickstarter is survival.
Survival.
And you're oh, I love this product. I wish they didn't take so long to come out. Why do you think they take so long to come out? Because it's expensive.
True story.
Talk about it and tell people always buy two. You're always going to have a friend you can give a gift. Just don't not do that.
Well, I'm happy to continue to steal with the endorsement from you guys. So.
I wish I'd just talked before Zach. Jesus, how do I follow that? All I ask from people is, well, yes, buy the books and don't steal from us, but be inspired to do your own stuff too. Everybody has something in them. Maybe not a full-length book, maybe not an adventure, maybe not a rule set, but you've got something. And whatever that something is, fucking do it. Do not be boring. Do not be afraid. Do it the way you want to do it. And yeah, then you can tell everyone to fuck off.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate you guys. Thanks again. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Check it out. Veins of the Earth, Red and Pleasant Land. Did you write the Blood and Chocolate?
Oh no, that's
No,
Kyle.
no.
Kyle Chenye of.
I'm terrible with names, so I apologize, but
Because I'm give a Kyle a spiel. He's a.
Kyle's in Toronto, and he's a Willy Wonka themed kind of Willy Wonka but horrible.
Right.
And he won Best Adventure. It's his first thing in print, really.
Yeah.
He did
Oh,
a
no.
little bit of stuff for WotC.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
some
He
Ian
was
Rod
like,
stuff.
hey, can I do something totally crazy, and they're like, better not.
Right.
He was convinced he wasn't going to win. He wrote a whole speech about how he wasn't going to win.
That's why he won.
And
then,
it was
you know.
the speech was basically that everyone should, even though I've lost this ending, I was never going
Right.
to win it. You shouldn't give up. You
Right.
need to keep trying to do original stuff, even though people try and stop you and try and crush you. You've got to believe in your dreams. I don't know if he's going to revoke that now he's won the ending, but presumably not.
Oh, right on, right on. Very cool. Well, thank you guys again. Appreciate it. Lamentations of the Frame Princess, awesome game. If you guys haven't heard about it, well, you have now, and feel free to check out our review, just for a simple plug from all of us, just from the actual mechanical and playing side of it. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rock.
Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.